Once upon a time, there was a prophet named Ayub alayhi salam. And this man was blessed with everything, from wealth to children to health. But even with all of this stuff, he was never an arrogant person. In fact, he was always humble, and he always was grateful to Allah for what he had. Now, Iblis, looking at him and realizing his humble status, he became angry because he was his enemy. So he wanted to actually make him ungrateful. So Iblis actually went to Allah and asked him permission to make his life difficult. And Allah saw this as a way to test Ayub alayhi salam because, of course, he is a prophet. So Allah actually granted Iblis the ability to test Ayub alayhi salam in different ways, which included things like money, wealth, and children. And throughout all of these struggles, Ayub alayhi salam still remained grateful. He was still an amazing slave of Allah. And his wife even went and told him to go and ask Allah for help. But Ayub alayhi salam asked her, how many years have I enjoyed good health? Like 80 years, right? And how many years have I been stricken with this illness? Only like 7 or 8 years. So using this, Ayub alayhi salam showed that his Lord's favor on him was way greater than the hardship he was placed in. So there's no point in calling upon his Lord. He should be grateful instead. And at this point, Ayub alayhi salam was suffering from a very potent medical condition where basically his skin was falling off his bones. But after his wife told him this, Allah finished the test. So Allah basically told him, strike your foot on the ground, and a spring gushed forth. And with this spring came healing and mercy, and all of the stuff that he lost, from his wealth to his children, it all got brought back by the will of Allah. Now, Ayub alayhi salam's story really goes to show that one of the greatest blessings you're given is your health. I mean, that was one of the essential things in his story. One of the things that Shaitan inflicted him with was a test of health. But Ayub alayhi salam remained grateful even through all of the years of his sickness, and at the end of the day, he was able to get cured by his dua and through the will of Allah. And I'll actually share with you a really interesting hadith, which is that Allah does not create an illness except that there's a cure. And there's one exception to this, which is, of course, old age or death. So inshallah, with this video, I'll explain to you everything about Islamic health and Islamic healing solutions, because there's a lot of stuff that maybe you already know, but there's also a lot of esoteric ways, things that you might not have heard of. Firstly, there's 2 types of health. 1, your physical health, and 2, I would say your spiritual. And that embodies all of your mental, social, and all of that side of your life. When it comes to physical health, there's a good chance you've heard a lot of the advice. The Prophet ﷺ said that the strong believer is more beloved to Allah than the weak believer. Now, strength here can mean a lot of different things, but without a doubt, it's more beloved to Allah if you are physically capable, because this is one thing that's actually enjoined upon us if we are men, right? Fighting in war and doing those physical tasks, these are things that we have to be able to do. So if you want to stay healthy, you have to exercise. And the Prophet ﷺ did things like certain sports, archery, horse riding, and all of these things are used for you to stay healthy and in good condition. And of course, after exercise, there's your diet. And a lot of people don't really talk about this a lot, but the Prophet ﷺ had a specific diet. And his diet mainly consisted of fruits, a small bit of meat, and a couple of other special foods. Special foods like raw milk, raw honey. These foods are actually really good for healing. I'll put a list up of foods he ate according to the sunnah, but on top of these foods, there are also a lot of other healing opportunities, especially with honey, which is mentioned in the Quran actually, and also with black seed oil, which is another thing mentioned in hadith. And of course, I shouldn't have to tell you the importance of food. I mean, if you're watching this, you probably already know, but the difference when you get on a good diet compared to a bad diet is really big, not just in your physical and your sickness, but also in your mental. And another thing I'll tell you is to avoid processed foods, because if you look at the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, they never had any processed foods. I mean, obviously, they had no McDonald's or fast food or anything there, but I guarantee you a lot of like the mental fog you have in your life and in your head, maybe the difficulty when you're trying to go to work and you just feel tired, a lot of that is due to just eating processed foods. You realize this yourself, maybe the days where you binge on junk food and stuff you know you shouldn't be eating, you realize you feel lethargic. It's a lot harder to do the things you need to do. And another thing in general is the Prophet ﷺ's eating practices, which is to not eat a lot. In fact, he ﷺ said that the disbeliever eats in 7 intestines, which basically means that they overeat. Now, the first reason for this and the most obvious is because being overweight is bad, and this is mentioned in the Sunnah.
The Prophet ﷺ said fat people need to stop being fat. It's a sunnah to fat shame. Let's go. It's a sunnah to fat shame!
Now, on top of this, eating a lot can actually cause lethargy and can bring you into sin. This is something a lot of people don't talk about, but when you're full, you're not only lazy, but you're more prone to your desires. Like you notice, maybe you're full, you don't feel like doing work, but you also are more desirous. So a really easy way to steer clear of your desires is to just stay in an empty stomach, or at least don't eat that much. And of course, a part of this is fasting. Fasting is the opposite of eating, and that's the reason why fasting gives you so much taqwa, or at least one of the reasons, is because without food, you're left with very little desire for a lot of the other haram things. And you might also notice, but a lot of recent scientists coming out saying that fasting has very big health benefits. So without a doubt, this is something you should do both for your spiritual health and just for your physical health. Now, the next thing that's interesting is going to the masjid, especially early in the morning. A lot of people have trouble with their sleep, and one of the biggest ways you could fix this is by going out into the sunlight, because your body reacts to the sunlight and it basically acts as a natural clock. When you look at sunlight in the morning, it's telling your body it's the morning time. So within 16 hours or however long the day is, you're going to start to feel tired. One of the best ways you can improve your sleep is just by waking up and going to look at the sunlight first thing in the morning. And so if you wake up and you go to the masjid for Fajr, what are you doing? You're going to look at the sunlight. And if you do this for all your daily 5 prayers, your day is going to be a lot more consistent, and you're actually going to get tired when you go to sleep because you're constantly looking at sunlight. Now, those are a bunch of the physical ways, but there are actually a lot of esoteric ways, things that you might not have heard of. Firstly, there's cure in dhikr itself. In fact, there's a story where the Prophet ﷺ sent a group of his people to cure this one person who a scorpion had bit him. And all his people did was actually just recite Surah Fatiha. And this was enough to cure an entire scorpion bite. This sounds crazy, but this is actually true. In many cases, the Quran is all you need to heal. And of course, I'm not saying you don't need medicine. There's medicine, and that's very important to use. But I would recommend doing ruqya and reading Quran. This is actually a very powerful method of healing. The key here is you need faith when you do it. A lot of people, especially now, lack faith. So they don't actually think that reciting Fatiha or reciting Quran is going to give them healing. But if you actually have that faith, it will work. Also, when it comes to stress, one of the biggest causes of it is arguing. And one of the easiest ways to increase your lifespan and make you healthier is to just leave off arguing. A lot of people argue just for the sake of arguing, or they go on Twitter or any other form of the internet and they go type up arguments with random people they don't really care about. This is doing nothing but increasing you in stress, and that's the worst thing you can do for your health. So one of the best mindsets you can have is to just leave off arguing. Just say, I don't care, because at the end of the day, arguing very rarely gives you anything positive.
So a man who is old, but in his mashallah, health, he's healthy. So they asked him, how did you reach this old age and good health? He said, I never argued in my life. So they said, no, this cannot be it. He said, yes, you're right. Don't argue. Don't waste your time. No, I'm going to defend my point of view. Move on.
The last thing I want to do is reiterate the fact that every disease has a cure. Even things like cancer, even things that we don't know the cure yet, Allah said that there is a cure, so there has to be a cure. And you could even do other methods. Like, for example, drinking camel milk mixed with camel urine. A lot of people don't like this. They find it weird or gross, but if the Prophet ﷺ said it, we have to take it as fact. And you might think this is weird, but I've heard stories of this actually helping and curing very potent diseases. Of course, you should use proven medical science as fact, but look at the Quran first, because at the end of the day, we are Muslims, so we take what the Quran and what the Prophet ﷺ says as first before everything else. That's all I have for this video. Don't forget to not stop making dua to Allah. Check out Clean Islamic Streetwear in the description. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.